Oh, there is that romantic music of Brazil. And behind it, propelling us somewhere near Sugarloaf, is Phil Upchurch, the guitarist, along with such legends, the late Wynton Kelly. And somehow it is that hour, 10 minutes, an hour and 50 minutes into Sunday morning, the 23rd of October. And tonight, Phil Upchurch will wrap up a 4-day engagement on stand at the Artist Quarter. It's off stage right now, and welcome in, Phil Upchurch. It's a pleasure to meet you.
How's it going, Leigh?
Fine. For me, it's almost early morning. I don't know how it feels for you.
For me, it always feels the same, whether it's noon or midnight.
How does that feel?
It's a great feeling, man. I mean, I love being in the business because of that. It doesn't matter whether it's noon or midnight. It's always the same time because of the nature of the business. Sometimes I get up at 2 in the morning and go out and get things done, and I love it.
I know you're both a performing artist and an arranger and a composer. How do you deal with the elusive melody if you're searching for one and need to meet a commitment to write something?
Well, generally, now you're pretty dead on with that question because generally when I write, I hear bass lines and chord form before I hear melody. And then I hear rhythm. And then after I get the rhythm and the chords happening, then I play a simple solo, simplify, and try to make it repetitious and think in terms. Generally, I'm thinking in terms of a vocal line, like a title. The title generally is in mind already, like one that I did on Chess Records back in '69. You couldn't be true.
And that's how that came about.
Right. It started with that simple phrase.
Well, you come from a town that has produced so many wonderful musicians, and there was DuSable High School. You're from John Marshall, aren't you?
From the west side, and DuSable was the south side.
Yes, and there was a formidable, inspiring, and sometimes frightening teacher by the name of Major Walter, or Captain Walter Diet.
Right, I heard about him, but I never had the pleasure to meet him or to work with him.
Phil Upchurch, did you study music in high school?
No, I didn't study in high school. I didn't play in the band. I was basically playing the guitar just for fun. I started playing the ukulele about my second year of high school. And after my father bought me a ukulele and got me started on it. He taught me how to play it. And about a year later, he asked me if I thought I'd be ready for a guitar. And I didn't really think so, but I said, you offer me a guitar, fine. Yeah, okay, cool. So I started working with the guitar, and I mostly played by ear, listening to records and playing with records. And then I started working with neighborhood singing groups, and that's how I got started.
Well, certainly if I mention the Dells and the Spaniels and Jerry Butler and Dee Clark, they're all familiar to you.
Exactly. That's how I got started playing with those guys.
And that was right in the heart of the rhythm and blues movement, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Late 60s, early 70s, early 60s.
And then later on, Ramsey Lewis and Groove Holmes and Stan Getz and Al Hurt, people like that?
I started working with all those people when I got out of the service. One of the first albums I did when I got out of service was I did 5 albums with a group called the Soulful Strings, led by Richard Evans. And he, in turn, he was a producer and arranger, so he was doing people like Groove Holmes and Ramsey Lewis. Also, Charles Stepney was producing and arranging for these people, and they were calling me to play rhythm guitar on these dates.
Well, it sounds like you've just had a wonderful and varied career. About those instruments, those challenges of yours, tell me about, let's see, how many different types of guitars do you carry with you?
Okay, what I have at home is an electric sitar.
A sitar?
Yes, sir. I have a solid body electric guitar, which gets a rock kind of a sound. I also have a nylon string, a classical, electric, and an acoustic nylon string guitar, and 2 styles of jazz guitar, semi-acoustic thin line, and a full body L5, which I just acquired. I just started studying music. Ironically, you probably won't believe this. I just learned to read music actually about 3 years ago. And I was inspired by listening to some Segovia records, basically. A friend of mine who's a classical player used to take me to classical concerts, and I finally, got hooked. And I wanted to play pieces, and it finally dawned on me, if you want to play these pieces, why don't you just sit down and study and learn to play them from the book? And that's how I learned how to read.
And all by yourself, life learning experience?
Basically, every now and then when I'd get stuck with a little something, I'd get on the telephone and ask somebody, the other reason, two reasons I had to learn how to read. Number one, I was just bored with everything I was playing. I wanted to be able to write out bass parts for my band, and I wanted to play classical pieces. So that's what drove me to learn how to read.
In the field of jazz guitar, is there anyone who's been an influence or a stimulator?
Well, my first influences on jazz was like Kenny Burrell and the Jimmy Smith records, All Day Long, the Champ, stuff like that, were my first influences that made me want to play jazz. And while I was out on the road with D. Clark, I met George Benson, who was with Jack McDuff at the time. That's how me and George met about 30 years ago, 25 years ago maybe, 1961. I had a record out called You Can't Sit Down, but I was playing with D. Clark. I was 19 at the time, and I didn't have the confidence to go out and travel on my own. And so I was still playing with D. Clark at that time, and George was with Jack McDuff, and they were opening a show for us. They were on the same show, and Jack was playing You Can't Sit Down as his closing number. And they were rehearsing it, and then after they rehearsed it, I walked up to George and tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Hey, man, you guys sound great." I said, "You playing that song great. Matter of fact, you're playing it better than me." He said, "Better than you? Who are you?" I said, "My name is Phil Upchurch." He said, "Phil Upchurch?" So that's how me and George met. But George has been definitely one of my favorites all-time players. I mean, there's many others, Jim Hall, Tel Farlow, people like that, and naturally Kenny. But George has got to be my all-time favorite. George Benson and Segovia.
Well, thank goodness for Segovia. He inspired you to tackle those scores and learn the art of reading.
Yes, sir.
Phil Upchurch, a pleasure talking with you. And I know it's after the ball, so to speak. You'll be on stand tonight at the Artist Quarter at 26th and Nicollet in Minneapolis. And thank you for sharing time with us.
Thank you for having me over. And it's been wonderful. We've been having a wonderful time down here at the Artist Quarter. So I hope that whoever hasn't made it at this point will get on over, because we're having a blast. We got Jay Young on the bass, we got Dale Alexander on the drums, and we got Rick Olson. All these people are from Minneapolis. And I got to tell you, man, these are some of the greatest cats I've ever worked with in the business ever. We're having a blast.
Well, that sounds like we have an exciting program to catch tonight at the Artist Quarter. Thanks again.
Thank you.